Hey everyone. Welcome back to Strange Mind 6. I'm your host, Ruby, and welcome back. I know I have been MIA for a little bit, but I was taking care of my health and other family matters and private things. But I do want to say that I am back with a couple more short stories from the book of the Bizzare, Freaky Facts and Strange Stories by Varla Ventura. And I did want to say, if you have any suggestions, don't hesitate to comment down below, and I will go ahead and try my very best to get the books so I can actually read them for you guys. But without further ado, I would like to ask if you could please hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. It would mean the world to me. And with that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get into this. Woman's best friend. A woman in California who ran a successful coffee business had her canine companion, constantly at her side. One afternoon, while taking a much-needed break, her dear doggie began to sniff and lick at her breast area. That night, her dog repeated the odd behavior by tugging at the blankets and biting at her pajama shirt. The next day, the canine jumped into her lap and dove at her breast, which caused some pain. She was stunned to discover that she had a lump in her breast, and later, medical tests revealed it to be a cancerous tumor. She had had a routine breast exam just 3 months earlier, but the odd behavior of her dog saved her life. If the tumor had developed more extensively, it could have spread into her lymph nodes. After months of chemotherapy and radiation, she is now living cancer-free. Now, I do want to say, ladies and gentlemen, please always make sure to get yourself checked up and checked out, and make sure that everything is good with your health. You know, we only have one life to live, and we gotta make it to the fullest. Now, the next story is the chapter 3, History's Mysteries. Famous names, unfortunate deaths. Benjamin Franklin's death. Benjamin Franklin died, strangely enough, from complications from sitting in front of an open window. Franklin was a big believer in fresh air. Even in the middle of winter, he slept with the windows open year-round, and as he wrote, "I rise almost every morning and sit in my chamber without any clothes whatsoever, half an hour or an hour, according to the season. In April 1790, the 84-year-old Franklin developed an abscess in his lungs, which his doctor blamed on too many hours spent sitting at the window that he loved to have open. The abscess burst on April 17th, sending him into a coma. He died a few hours later. the death of Joseph Stalin. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who murdered millions of his own country's people, may have been the last victim of his own reign of terror. On the evening of March 1st, 1953, the 74-year-old Stalin stayed up drinking with his cronies until 4 a.m. His normal habit was to rise again around noon, but that day he didn't. As the hours passed and Stalin did not emerge from his private quarters, his aides began to panic. They didn't want to risk his wrath, but they were worried. At 10:30 p.m., they finally worked up the nerve to enter his apartments, where they found him sprawled out on his living room floor, paralyzed by a stroke and unable to speak. The terrified aides still did not know what to do, so they did not call for the Kremlin doctors until 8:30 the following morning. By then, it was too late. According to Stalin's daughter, Svetlana, the dictator died a difficult and terrible death 4 days later. The euthanization of King George V. King George V of England, grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II, was euthanized with morphine and cocaine to meet a newspaper deadline. The king, a heavy smoker, was in the final stages of lung disease. On January 20th, 1936, his death was imminent. The date of the state funeral had been set, and the London Times had been instructed to hold the presses. A death announcement would be coming soon, but that night, as the newspaper's deadline loomed, the king still held on. The king's doctor, who saw that the king's condition might last for a few more hours and disrupt the arrangements, decided to euthanize him so that the morning papers would still make the announcement that the king was dead. Wow. Oof. Catherine the Great. There are probably more rumors about the death of Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, than that of any other monarch in history. Most of them relate to her reputedly unusual sexual appetites. For some reason, many people believed a horse was being lowered onto her when the cable holding the horse aloft snapped, crushing her. That is a complete myth, perhaps invented by the French. If you're French, I'm sorry, I'm just reading what is written in the book. Russia's enemies at the time. What really happened? 2 weeks after suffering a mild stroke at the age of 67, Catherine appeared to be recovering. On November 5th, she began her day with her usual routine, rising at 8 a.m., drinking several cups of coffee, and going to spend 10 minutes in the bathroom. But she did not come out after 10 minutes, and when her footman finally looked in on her, he found her sprawled out on the floor, bleeding and barely alive. Like Elvis Presley, she had had a stroke while sitting on the toilet. She died the next day. George Eastman. George Eastman, the founder of Eastman Kodak and the father of modern photography. Okay, this is going to be a trigger warning for Unaliving. So if you get triggered by that, please go ahead and skip this video now. If not, we're going to continue. George Eastman, the founder of Eastman Kodak and the father of modern photography, committed suicide. In 1932, Eastman was 78 years old and felt tired and ill. On March 14th, he updated his will, and later in the day, he asked his doctor and his nurses to leave the room, telling them that he wanted to write a note. It turned out to be a suicide note. He wrote the note, put out his cigarette, removed his glasses, and shot himself in the heart. Isadora Duncan. Okay, we're not just gonna go ahead and skip to the next story. I do want to mention the last story. If you are feeling suicidal or if you're feeling down, please call the 1-800-SUICIDE hotline number, and just know that we do care about you. And if you don't have anyone at home that actually does care about you, know that I care, and know that you're not alone, that there is help. So, sorry guys if you can hear that. It's my air purifier. It's going down now, the numbers. But let's continue. Isadora Duncan, one of the world's most famous dancers, died from a broken neck on September 14, 1927. Duncan climbed into the passenger seat of a Bugatti race car wearing a long red silk scarf. The scarf was a little too long. When the car started off, the tail end of the long silk scarf wrapped around the wheel and yanked Duncan out of the car, snapping her neck, dragging her for several yards before the driver even realized what had happened. In an eerie twist, the day before she died, Duncan had told an Associated Press reporter, "I'm afraid that some quirk accident may happen." Nelson Rockefeller. When Nelson Rockefeller, the former governor of New York, the vice president under Gerald Ford, the grandson of John D. Rockefeller, and founder of Standard Oil, died in 1979 at age 71, official reports said he had had a heart attack while sitting at his desk. Later, this story was found to be a cover-up. He was actually alone in his townhouse with 25-year-old Megan Marshak, who was on Rockefeller's staff. She supposedly had been working with him on a book about his modern art collection, but as the New York Daily News reported, there was no papers at his house. Sorry, y'all. This video, I didn't mean for all the interruptions. But, let's continue. There was no papers at his house, just food and wine. Uh-oh, I see where this is going. So how did he really die? What really happened? Only 2 people know, and one of them died. A fatal nosebleed. Attila the Hun did not die in battle, as many believe. He met his maker on his wedding night. After a night of lovemaking, he got a nasty nosebleed and lost so much blood that he died. What comes around goes around. Fleming was a poor Scottish farmer. One day, while trying to make a living for his family, he heard a cry for help coming from a nearby bog. He dropped his tools and ran to the bog. There, to his waist in black muck, he saw a terrified boy screaming and struggling to free himself. Farmer Fleming saved the lad from what could have been a slow and terrifying death. The next day, a fancy carriage pulled up to the Scotsman's sparse surroundings. An elegantly dressed nobleman stepped out and introduced himself as the father of the boy that Farmer Fleming had saved. The nobleman offered to repay Farmer Fleming for saving his son's life, but the farmer would not accept payment. At that moment, Farmer Fleming's own son came to the door of the family hovel. The nobleman and the farmer struck up a deal that he would provide Farmer Fleming's son with the same level of education that his son would enjoy. His son attended the very best schools and in time graduated from St. Mary's Hospital Medical School in London. He went on to become known throughout the world as the noted Sir Alexander Fleming, the discoverer of penicillin. Years afterward, the same nobleman's son, who was saved from the bog, was stricken with pneumonia. What saved his life in this time? Penicillin. The name of the nobleman, Lord Randolph Churchill. His son's name, Sir Winston Churchill. That really is what goes around comes around. The Ugly Pickup Parade and Contest. In 1987, newspapers columnist Les Mann wrote in homage to his junker 1974 pickup, Black Beauty, claiming it was the ugliest truck on the planet. Irate ugly truck owners wrote in, saying they could top him. And so the first ugly truck contest was born in Chadron, Nebraska. Experts picked the ugly pickup of the year. The official rules are that trucks have to be street legal and over a decade old. They have to be able to move under their own power. A majority of their surface area has to be rust and dents, and most importantly, they've got to have a good ugly truck name. Contestants get extra points for something especially ugly about their truck. That's funny. I would like to see that. Mary King's Close. The macabre past of Mary King's Close. located in the Old Town section of Edinburgh, Scotland, and sealed off in the 1600s, is seeing the light of day again saw the light of day again in 2003. The close was open, becoming a new tourist attraction, a preserved slice of 17th century life. Much mystery surrounded Mary King's Close. For centuries, locals have told tales of the close being sealed off to prevent the spread of the plague. No evidence disputes this story, and there are some who say that the quarantine was voluntary, but lifelong inhabitants of Edinburgh say that after the close was sealed off, those outside heard anguished cries of people dying of starvation and begging to be let out, and they say that after the close was reopened, finger marks were found clawed into the bricks. Mary King's Close is now open to the public and is the site of much paranormal and historical investigation. It is thought to be one of the most haunted places in Scotland. And that, my friends, is where we will leave it off for today. So please give this video a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And tune in next time. This is Ruby, signing off.